Good evening, everyone. My name is Mildred Williamson, a member of the Chicago Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. Welcome to our forum on community control of the police. I am thrilled to have our guest speakers and to share them with you and the rest of the world. First, I'd like to introduce Gus Newport, who is the former mayor of Berkeley, California, who, prior to becoming mayor, as a member of the city council, was a member of the as a member of the community control um, board that they had at the time. Moved on and became mayor and led the effort to establish community control of the police. And it is that history that informs the development of the legislation here in Chicago for Cpac. Um, I am thrilled to welcome him to our forum this evening. And our other two speakers are our on the ground leaders of the Chicago Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. That would be Jazmine Salas, who serves as co-chair, and Frank Chapman, who serves as field organizer and executive director of the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. I'd like to first open this up for each of our three speakers to say a few opening remarks. I will have some questions to ask them, and then we'd like to open it up for discussion from the audience. First, I'd like to welcome Gus Newport. If you would please have a few words in the beginning of this event.
Yes, thank you, Mildred. I'm extremely pleased to be here with the National Alliance, an organization which I once served on the board of. We must understand that police brutality goes back to 1617. It is a part and party to slavery. And that's why police don't necessarily work for communities. Police work for each other. One of the things I found out being on the second police review commission in the country, I grew up in Rochester, New York. In 1962, after the Rufus Fairwell case, a black gas station owner who was beaten to within an inch of his life by two white policemen in Rochester. And when we took that case out, we found out that one of the police had gone to a Catholic school, and when he was in high school, beaten a nun to within an inch of her life. So what that showed us, there is no background check on police. These are just roles that are put on these departments. We took that case all the way to the federal court. It was the first police brutality case won in a federal court in the United States in 1960. Soon after that, the police raided the Black Muslim Mosque in Rochester. Daisy Bates from Little Rock, Arkansas was there organizing, and Malcolm X called her. Said, Daisy, I got to come to Rochester to have you talk. She gave him my number. I didn't even know it. Malcolm called me, and I was just taken back. But he talked for 2 hours, and he and I talked for 2 hours every night for 2 weeks. He flew into Rochester. In those days, the planes landed on tarmac, and I was standing in the airport surrounded by all these white men in white shirts and felt hats. And Malcolm walked through the door, the airport. He said, "Who is Gus Newport?" Because we hadn't seen each other. I said, "I am." He said, "Young blood, you got the best tap telephone in America. This is all FBI here." So you have to understand. And as a kid, after I was drafted out of the military. When I come back, I went to look for where were all the black young men that I went to school with. Half of them were dead. Another 25% were in prison. That is the things you got to understand. I was knocked off of police going by police when I was 11 years old. So I went on from Malcolm to Berkeley and whatever else. And in Berkeley, after I had worked in Puerto Rico doing economic development and stuff, I got on the Police Review Commission, the Planning Commission. And we made the police department get rid of using helicopters, gas, certain kinds of weapons and everything, and whatever else. And then when I got elected was when something called Proposition 13 passed and cut our budget. And we looked at the police budget, had 60% of all the tax dollars in the city, which is true in most places. And so we decided to reorder the police department. We took all police off desk jobs because police get paid higher money because of the insurance they get. So we put all regular people on desk jobs. It was right after Reagan was governor. He closed all the mental health institutions. And all these homeless people were coming to Berkeley and San Francisco and places. So we hired a lot of mental health people and put them in the cars to ride with police and to walk the streets. We also saw that the homeless weren't being attended to, so we bought some yellow school buses, put them on a marina, put porta potties in them, put portable showers outside, gave them each a mailbox so that they could sign up for SSI and whatever else. And then we began to look at the totality of what the police needed for. We recognized that, especially people of color, Blacks and Latinos, didn't have best jobs because we weren't that well trained, we weren't that well educated. So we started giving money from the police department to those nonprofits to train people for better jobs. We also, a guy named Ronnie Stevens, whose father was in the party, when he got out after he was freed on a truck, they tried a case of him for supposedly shooting the police. He went to the University of California, Berkeley, and we got all freshmen in the university to work with us on developing a better education system for our people. We sent them to Cuba to look at it. Cuba has a literacy rate right now of 0.1%. The literacy rate in the United States is 42%. Our healthcare is 72% in the world, etc., whatever else. So you have to have the data and analysis to create the public policy. And then I don't know if Frank Chapman remembers it, but when we were with the National Alliance, we began looking at what was happening to Blacks in public office and whatever else. I mean, Eddie Chapman from Alabama and some of the others. And Frank brought that data to me. And the fact is, to create public policy, to bring the kind of change that's necessary, you have to have that data. And I certainly understand why Blacks are in the numbers they are in Chicago. They were fleeing Alabama and Mississippi and places like that, looking for places where there were better jobs, etc., whatever else. But when we look at why we don't have affordable housing and things like that, it goes back to the New Deal, what we call redlining. Roosevelt was first a right winger, and then he moved to the left and became some of the socialists. But in order to pass the New Deal legislation, he had to get the Southern Congress people go along with him. And they put something called redlining. It said that Blacks could not have access to money for purchasing housing, et cetera, and things like that. And then we come back to 2008. And when we had predatory lending and all that, Blacks lost 72% of their wealth, et cetera, whatever else. There's a whole story, and you have to have that analysis to know how to create public policy. But we got to engage our people. I'm so glad when Frank tells me that you all had 100,000 people out there marching and whatever else, because we got to open the eyes of everybody. Of course, we know we're victims of the worst leader, president, since Hitler. He might be worse than Hitler, as far as I know, if we don't get rid of him. But people have got to get organized and for a better society. So I am so pleased that you all are having this discussion. And I've known Brother Frank Chapman for a long time. And when I called him this morning, he said, "How you feeling?" I said, "I'm just an old country boy." He said, "Man, the country forgot all about you. Don't tell me that stuff." Anyway, I love you all and what you're doing. And I'm pleased to be a part of this discussion. You're muted.
I really appreciate that history. Thank you so much. Now I'd like to introduce Jazmine Salas, who again is a co-chair of the Chicago Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, and absolutely boots on the ground.
Hey everyone, good evening. My name is Jazmine. As Mildred said, I'm one of the co-chairs of the Alliance. I'm just going to quickly touch on the history of the Cpac ordinance in Chicago. So the campaign for Cpac, an all-elected civilian police accountability council, began in 2012 after the death of Miss Rekia Boyd locally, and also in response to the death of Trayvon Martin nationally. So at the time, we were working primarily on the South Side, and we held our first people's hearings on police crime and torture in a small space with about 150 people who are supporting us and helping us craft the Cpac bill. And early on in the campaign, we were only supported by 2 alderpersons. And throughout the years, through mobilizing folks and also canvassing, we've been able to grow that to 19. Um, so throughout the years, as I've mentioned, we've mobilized tens of thousands of people into the streets, using social media, and also using our allies as well to get boots on the ground. Just to give you an example, this was actually one of the first major actions that I attended, organized by Carper, um, partially by Carper. But in 2015, we worked in coalition with organizations like Black Lives Matter and BYP 100 to organize the first Black Friday boycott protest, to shut down the Mag Mile. And Black Friday is a big shopping day, but we were able to mobilize thousands of people and ended up having such an impact that some stores reported earning 40% less and selling 40% less than they thought they would. So as you can see, we've definitely been like mobilizing folks into the streets, trying to put pressure on the system, to pass Cpac and to also hold police accountable. And we've also done this, by building a really grassroots campaign, through tabling and canvassing in the neighborhoods across Chicago. Our strategy is to really build block by block, ward by ward, neighborhood by neighborhood. Our main focus has been on the South Side in majority Black neighborhoods like Inglewood, Woodlawn, and South Shore. Over the years, we've branched out to the North Side, communities like Uptown, Edgewater, and now Albany Park. And doing these two things, mobilizing folks to actions and also tabling, allowed our campaign to grow from 150 people crowded in a room to 60,000 supporters. And we were able to introduce the Cpac ordinance actually in July 2016, with Alderman Carlos Rosa being the main sponsor. And at the time, we had a handful of alder folks who signed on to the bill. I think it was like 6 or 7. So we went from 2, early on in 2012 to July 16 now having a handful, I think 8. And in summer 2018, we participated in 5 community hearings about Cpac and other police accountability bills, held by the Public Safety Committee of the City Council. And the overwhelming majority of people who came out and testified spoke in support of Cpac. And of course, we made great gains in 2019. We had 63 elder people who were running for office, on the ballot who supported Cpac, and 19 ended up taking office. So we went from 2 to 8 to 19 in a span of about 6 years, which is great. I think it shows definitely that like mobilizing folks, mobilizing the masses in particular to take action is how you really build power for Black and Latinx communities. And to date, we have 80 endorsing organizations and close allies like BLM and BYP, as I mentioned, but also Trinity United Church of Christ, the United States Palestinian Community Network, Freedom Road Socialist Organization, the DSA in Chicago, CTU, SCIU 73, United Working Families, Anakbayan Chicago, and more. And in 2012, we've seen tremendous growth, in response to the murder of George Floyd. On May 30th, we called for a demonstration that had 20,000 people on foot and 4,000 people in cars, united behind justice for George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and Cpac now. And just hearing everything that I discussed, I think we can concretely say that there is no grassroots movement for community control of the police in the US that has come this far in struggle, as we have here in Chicago. So I'm definitely looking forward to a very insightful conversation. Excited to be here with Gus and Frank, and excited to answer your questions. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jazmine, for that overview. It is inspiring what all has been accomplished in such a short amount of time. And now I'd like to ask our field organizer, organizational historian, and executive director for the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, Frank Chapman, to give his opening remarks. Unmute.
Thanks, Mildred. Thanks for those kind remarks. Thanks, Jazmine. That was an outstanding capsulized history of our movement here in Chicago and what our accomplishments have been. And thank you, Gus, for rousing up memories and and whatnot. Um, and I want to also express a special appreciation for Gus because if it wasn't for Gus Newport and the movements that came about in the '60s, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing today. You know, they're our predecessors. They uh, they gave birth to our movement. They're our parents. You know, and this is important to recognize because you know in social movements there's continuity and there's discontinuity. But sometimes we just see the discontinuity. We just see the new rebels coming on the scene and whatnot, and that's always a good thing. That's always a blessing, you know. But sometimes we do not see the connection that they have to our past struggles and our history, you know. So I just want to speak on that a little bit because it's something about the struggle for community control of the police that is often misunderstood, and that is that the demand for community control of the police comes out of the heart and soul of the Black liberation movement. You know, Gus touched upon it briefly in his remarks that this is an issue that we have been struggling with since 1619, ever since we were brought to this continent as slaves. You know, because policing our population, policing an oppressed population of Black people, required special codes, special laws, and 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 and, and also a special type of policing, uh, slave patrols and so forth and so on. You know, and it came out during the George Floyd rebellions. The, the the most tragic thing about our country is that we've never gotten significantly beyond slavery. You know, we still exist under the shadow of the plantation. This country was founded on slavery and genocide, and is still acting out that legacy. And we have to bring that to an end. That's our purpose. And so when we talk about community control of the police, we're talking about a struggle that was born in a period of great social upheaval and protests, which came about in the '60s. And those of us who lived through that period know that the police were not just repressing us and sicking dogs on us and shooting us with fire hoses and things like that. They were killing us. They were killing us. And 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 when it came to organizations like the Black Panther Party and other groups that grew more militant, uh, they started killing them too. And they got away with this. They killed Fred Hampton and Mark Clark in their beds, right here in Chicago. These were not just Panthers; they were community leaders, and they were also leading the struggle for community control of the police at that time, back in 1969. So that's when the struggle really got sharp, and people really began to see the importance of it because they begin to see that unless we get some kind of control over the police, they were going to destroy our movement, you know, and put our people in a new form of bondage. And they damn near did it. Yeah, they almost accomplished that because see, the police system in the United States of North America is successful when it comes to mass incarceration, when it comes to putting our people in jail. They have a very good track record when it comes to suppressing movements in the Black community. They have a very good track record. What they don't have a good track record for doing is keeping us safe. What they don't have a good track record for doing is dealing with crime. The police crimes are connected to all crimes. So they're not fighting crimes in our communities. They're exploiting crimes in our communities. And so this question of community control of the police is fundamental to the struggle for Black liberation. because they are the main block in the road. You know, I ask people sometimes, how come we don't have bigger movements in Chicago around the struggle for housing? How come we don't have bigger movements in Chicago around the struggle for unemployment? How come we didn't have no big movement in Chicago around the struggle to stop the schools from being closed in predominantly black communities? How come? It's because of police repression. Police repression. Because what police repression does, it not only hampers and ties up our movements, it puts a lot of young black people in jail who could otherwise be a part of our struggle for social change. You can't hardly touch a family in the black community and in the Latinx community who hasn't had somebody to go to jail. And jail is also a form of disenfranchising us because once you become a convicted felon, they stop you from voting. So we got millions of people that can't vote because they've been in prison. Right now, the jail and prison population in the United States and people tied up in that system is close to 4 million and some change. Almost the same number of people who were in slavery in 1861, according to Michelle Alexander. So this is a serious problem, and it touches all aspects of our existence. So getting community control of the police is very important, very important. It is the most profound democratic struggle we've had in this country ever, because what they have done in large measure, I mean, police were involved in the assassination of Dr. King, they were involved in the assassination of Malcolm X, they were involved in the assassination of Fred Hampton. I mean, we could go on, Medgar Evers, we could go on and on and on and on and on, you know. So these people are standing directly in the road of progress, and we've got to get them out of that road. So when we talk about community control of the police, this is not an abstraction, you know. This is a reality that we have to fight for, because if we don't get that, then we are allowing them to continue to choke the life out of our Black liberation movement, and also out of our communities by putting more and more people in jail. You know, they arrested a 5-year-old child not too long ago. You know, in a school, the police did. We've seen videotapes of police throwing students down and beating them up in schools and whatnot. So this is a very, very repressive era that we're living in, and getting community control of the police is a pathway out of that. And I'm so glad that the National Alliance and the Chicago Alliance are embarking upon that pathway, and that we have engaged hundreds of thousands of people in our communities to join us in this. And I think our future is going to be great. I think we're going to have millions to join us as we go forward.
So thanks so much to all three of you for those opening remarks. I want to acknowledge that there may be participants on this call, hopefully many, that are beginning to learn more about the intricacies of these struggles. So I have a few questions that I'm hopeful will be responded to in a way that helps people who may have um, certain confusions or need clarification. And it's this one. Um, I know all three of you have given some detailed history and recent history of accomplishments around the struggle for civilian control of police. But I'd like for one of you to respond to this question. We often hear the term civilian review, civilian oversight. How does community control of police differ from civilian review and oversight? What are the differentials between those concepts?
Oh, this is Gus. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Police are often hired to work for police. Police should be hired to work for community. And therefore, the community has to have a structure which calls for what the community needs. I mean, what they're doing, claiming fighting crime, etc., whatever else, they need to look inside themselves and find themselves. And we got the data before we reorganize the police in Berkeley. And I must say, I had a lot of help from a man named Troy Duster. Troy Duster comes from Chicago, the South Side. He directed the Institute for the Study of Social Change. He's the grandson of Ida B. Wells. And he gathered all the data, all the analysis, so that we could inform what the community needed police for. The police think they can just run around rampant and do what they want to do to people, as Frank has said in this net. We don't want no police like that. We don't want crime, but crime is rampant because of police activities for the most part, and because our communities don't put money where it should be to educate our people, to create better jobs, etc., to create the conditions for which crime would lessen and everything else. So community has to understand they have to have a master plan of what they want to see police do and for what. Police is just another part of the workforce of a city government. They ain't got no special jurisdiction to do as they want, etc., whatever else. And that's got to be understood. And therefore we have. And the other thing is we have to have an international analysis. Berkeley was the first city to divest from South Africa when I was there. I was on the committee on the question of Palestine and the committee against apartheid. We have to have and understand where slavery, etc., and all this stuff, and the bad role our country plays, not only within these United States of America, but throughout the world. All the militarism, etc., whatever else. That's what we got to have a better analysis of. So we got to educate one another. And I'm glad to see the National Alliance is getting hundreds of thousands of people out in the street, because you got to wake up the American people.
Would others like to respond to that question as well?
Yeah, I have something in response. This is something I hear actually all the time. What is the difference between an oversight board and a control board? So I like to say an oversight board is having a seat at the table, but a control board is owning the table, being able to control who eats with you, who sits with you. We don't just want to have input when it comes to policing. We want to control them. If we just have input and don't think about altering the power between us and the police, they're not going to listen to us. We've seen this historically that, time after time, the police across the country will open themselves up to get input from the community, and very rarely do they listen to the people who are coming forward. That's why we need control, so we can have total and complete control over the police.
Thank you for that. Let me just go forward with the next question, which is related. Civilian Police Accountability Council, or Cpac, is the name of the ordinance here in Chicago that the Alliance has spearheaded the work for. I'd like to ask if you all would give a description of that ordinance. What would it do? And how would that compare with other types of proposals for police accountability? We know that there is a competing framework that was developed in response, I would add, to the momentum for Cpac that had been obtained. Can you describe a little bit about those differences and where we are now in the struggle to actually make Cpac an actual ordinance that can pass?
Yeah, that's a. Am I on?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. That's a complex question, but I'll try to give a simple answer. Um, the main difference between Cpac and all the other ordinances, and I'm not going to give publicity to any of them, is that Jazmine already summed it up. You know, Cpac is about control, and so how do we spell that out in the legislation? We will have control over who polices our communities and how our communities are policed. And the way that this is accomplished is specifically spelled out in the legislation. For example, the superintendent of police, which is presently an appointed position that the mayor owns, that would be changed. Cpac takes that power away from the mayor and gives it to the community. We would be responsible for hiring and firing the chief of police, the superintendent of police, um, and also we would play a major role in all of the disciplinary policies with regard to the police. In other words, with regard to police conduct in our communities. Like we would eliminate stop and frisk, you know, uh, no knock warrants, and all that type of stuff. But most importantly, we will have a decisive hand in writing the police manual for conduct, the conduct manual for the police department. People are talking about defunding the police. Well, Cpac would have the authority to do that. Presently, the police budget is 40% of the budget, period, in Chicago. That's higher than anybody else. Now, at a time when we have you know, people without jobs, and a housing crisis, mental health care is a mess. They're getting 40% of the budget. So, as Gus pointed out earlier, you gotta address the needs of the people, uh, not the illusionary needs of the police in terms of fighting crime, because they're getting all this money to fight crime, yet 70% of the homicides in the black community are unsolved. So they're not doing a very good job with all that money, you know. So we would definitely be in favor of defunding them in terms of a lot of their practices. Uh, that budget is too bloated. We would cut that budget probably by 75%, and pass that money into the community, where it's needed. Where it's needed. They closed 50 schools in mostly black communities, while the police were getting 40% of the budget. Ridiculous. So these are the things that Cpac addresses, and you can go online and look up this legislation by either going to our website, stoppolicecrimes.com, or you can go to the city clerk and pull up the legislation. And it's very easy to read. We wrote it in simple language that a person with a fifth grade education can understand. So I would advise people to check it out. But this is community control of the police for real. Not we're not playing games here, where we come to a table and we review the police in terms of what their conduct has been, but can't do a damn thing about it. You know, that's what a review board does. You know, it reviews the police's conduct, but what do they do about it? We've had review boards going on now for over 40 some years, and they don't have no track record as far as indicting police for committing crimes, and most importantly, the crime of murder. You know, so we would change all of that. This Cpac represents a systemic change in terms of how policing would be done in this city.
Frank lays it out as it should be. I remember, even though Berkeley is a weak mere form of government, we wrote in the power to hire and fire the city manager and the chief of police. We also looked at, we had one administrator for every 7 patrol persons. That was unheard of in the country. We had to redistribute that. We looked at the time when crimes were highest, from midnight to 6 in the morning, whatever. So we knew who to put on for what reasons, whatever. But the fact is, you had to also look at the elected officials. What role were they going to play? If they were not going to take advantage of this and get rid of these people, then we're going to have to recall them, etc., whatever else. And we had to put more money into education, into job development, into mental health, into things that is the causes for crimes, etc., whatever else. So you have to create a master plan. And I'm glad to see so many young people now with social media and whatever else, marching and whatever else, because you have the intelligence, the technology now to do that. And believe me, we have got to do that. You know, after we reorganized the Berkeley Police Department, there was not one police shooting or police crime for 10 years. I didn't realize we raised the quality of education that even police had to have. And I didn't realize until after I got out, because I was involved, that we ended up hiring 20 former Black Panthers on our police department. Who knows the community better, and such, and whatever it did, and they brought that in. And I'm gonna tell you a little story now. When I ran for second term, the white police had a press conference in City Hall in the basement, and they had created some false data saying that crime had risen. It was nothing. It was a lie. So when the Black police found out about that, they called me and they went down there, and I went down to the basement where this press conference was going on and said, "Hey, that lie." Those facts, those terms they give you is all bullshit. So the white police got mad and told the Black police, "Y'all get out of here. You know, we'll shoot you." The Black police said, "We got guns just like you." It was a standoff. We went on. I got elected again by the biggest crowd ever in the history of the city. So organizing is necessary, y'all.
Yeah. Those were the days.
Let,
Yes, sir.
let me follow that up with this. In terms of Chicago, for people who want to reach out to their local elected official, their alderperson, um, can you say something about the Cpac ordinance and where it stands, and what alderpersons need to have nudging? And then two, can you share with us, has this model legislation that's been developed here for Chicago, and based on, in part, on the history provided by the experience in Berkeley, has there been momentum in other municipalities around the country? And can you comment on that?
Well, let me say this first of all. You know, like I say, for 10 years, everything was clean in Berkeley. Then I got out of politics because I never aspired to be when I was drafted. But Berkeley's been going through some real bad changes right now, and they got a big police review thing going on right now, and a lot of people getting involved in it, trying to look at what necessary. And the sad thing is, we got a Black woman city manager who never forgets to let us know she's from Alabama. I don't give a damn where she's from. If she ain't gonna do right by the chief or whatever else, she got to go too. And that's what you got to understand, because we got some Blacks that are problem people in high offices, etc. too. Look at this boy in where was that? Kentucky, what he just did, etc. Whatever else. And so we had to have a depth of analysis, who is what kind of people, and we cannot allow the police to even think that they're God Almighty and they can do this and that. It ain't nothing but another part of the city workforce. You know, when and there's been times and other things that happen. I remember, when Harold Washington ran for office in Chicago, I and others from Berkeley came there and campaigned for him with y'all. I mean, we got to have people who look at it from a socialist perspective, etc. We got Trump now talking about socialism is a crime and we got to stop all this and that. Well, the average American person don't have a clue what socialism is, etc. This and that. That's due to our education system. So we've got to educate people, make them understand what it is we have to be and do to make this a better society, so that there's a real future for our next generation.
Others want to comment, especially in terms of what can be shared about what momentum may be gaining around the country for similar legislation?
Well, I would like to defer the question in terms of what's going on to Chicago to Jazmine. She's the co-chairperson of the Chicago Alliance here. So before we say anything about the nation.
Okay, yeah, I can speak to that. Currently, right now, the Cpac ordinance is trapped in the Public Safety Committee. There are 19 members of the city council who are on that committee, and I'm going to read all 19 very quickly. So Derek Curtis, Jason Irvin, James Gardiner, Raymond Lopez, Matthew Martin, Gregory Mitchell, Emma Mitz, Anthony Napolitano, Samantha Nugent, Harry Osterman, Ariel Reboras, Roderick Sawyer, Michael Scott Jr., Deborah Silverstein, Michelle Smith, Nicholas Sposato, Chris Taliaferro, Patrick Thompson, and Thomas Tunney. So if you heard your alderman, if I read their name and you heard it, we definitely need you to contact them and tell them to support Cpac. Of course, if you didn't hear your alderperson, we still want you to contact your alderperson and tell them to support Cpac. We know getting Cpac out of the Public Safety Committee is only the first step. Eventually, it will go to the wider city council. So we tell everybody, contact your alderperson, but especially if they are a member of the Public Safety Committee. If you missed, the full list that I read out, you can look it up on the Chicago City Clerk website. All of the committee members are listed there. And also, we also call on folks to contact Mayor Lightfoot as well to put pressure on her. We know the way that Chicago politics are set up, the mayor has a lot of influence and power over the city council folks. So definitely blow up, Mayor Lightfoot's email, blow up the phone, tell her to support Cpac. We want her on board as well. We know she is a cop. We know she has a history of defending cops, both as a lawyer and also politically as well. But that doesn't mean that she has more power than us as the people. So it's very critical that we contact her as well.
Absolutely. In terms of the national situation, yes, Mildred, we do have other movements in other cities that are taking the Cpac path uh, and who are involved with the National Alliance Against Racism and Political Repression. For example, in Jacksonville, Florida, they have a group called, which is also fighting for community control of the police using the Cpac model, and which is really the Berkeley model. uh, and and we also have folks in Dallas, Texas. We also have people in Tallahassee, Florida. We also have people in Salt Lake City, Utah. And we have a very strong, well, in most of these places, we got strong movements. But I wanted to mention Minneapolis in a special way because that's where George Eliot was murdered. We have a very powerful movement there for community control of the police, and they are also members of the National Alliance Against Racism and Political Repression, and they're also a part of the Black Lives Matter movement, and also local movements there that are fighting for various families to get justice. So we we're in the process of developing a very potent national struggle um, all across the country. And a testament to that was the conference that we had here in Chicago back in November of last year, where we had on our opening night we had over 1,000 people, and they represented uh, 25 different states and 101 different cities and 250 different organizations, you know. And so that grouping came together and refounded the National Alliance Against Racism and Political Repression. And we're still working on building this organization and making it a part of the national scene. Uh, so there's great possibilities that are in front of us, and some great groundwork has been put down already in the areas that I mentioned to you.
Um, I do want to ask, first of all, thank all three of you so much for the responses. I would like to also ask question that I think people may be thinking about, and it was referred to earlier in terms of the current slogans about defunding the police. And Frank, I know you mentioned in your remarks that having civilian control over police accountability, uh, that particular board would be the drivers for rearranging funding for police. But I'd like to ask if, for all three of you, if you'd like to elaborate on this concept and also make the connection uh, to the additional uh, not just slogan, but framework and concept and struggle for the rearranging, reimagining of the punishment system or abolishment of police. All three of you, I'd really appreciate your responses.
Well, I can open up on this one. So we definitely, I mean, as Frank said and Gus has said as well, the police get entirely too much money. You know, in the city of Chicago, 40% of our operating budget is spent on policing, while schools are closing, mental health clinics are closing, and there are communities that aren't getting the adequate resources that they need to thrive. So we definitely support, you know, defunding the police. But our position as Carper, I think, is we want to be in control of that defunding. You know, ultimately, it comes down to, do you trust the mayor and do you trust people in the city council to respond, to defund the police and actually listen, um, to defund the police in a way that aligns with the way that we are proposing? You know, because it's very easy as politicians to say, yes, you know, we support defunding and then not do it. You know, I know that's been the case in some cities nationally where I think in New York, where the mayor said, yes, you know, we are going to defund. And it turns out that it wasn't actually defunding the police. So if we're going to do it, we want to do it right. And in order for us to do it right, we need to be in total control of that process. So for us, of course, you know, defund. The police are getting way too much money, but we need to be the ones actually defunding. You know, Frank said 75%. You know, I definitely, you know, think that's plenty. You know, but we need to be the ones at the table driving that process to make sure that it happens.
You know, government should have a plan, and there should be a plan for the budget for all departments based on what is expected to be accomplished from those departments. I mean, that's the planning department, that's public works, that's all kinds of things. If you remember when Harold Washington was mayor, he went out and took all the money from the airport at one time and brought it back downtown and hired a lot of nonprofit workers to do affordable housing and things, etc. And like that. I mean, you know, you got to also go against some of the federal programs, urban renewal and all those things, which perpetuated uh, the housing crunch, etc., whatever else. So you have to have an analysis of that. And you got you young people now, we got social media that gives us the capacity to have all that news. So let's work together and make those necessary changes. It is just not, it's reorganizing for a functional good and will for the best of what the city needs. And that's what it is. And I don't know how in the beginning police budgets got made, but somebody must just say, well, let's give them 80% of the money and then we'll think about the other thing. Well, ain't no way in the world you could have anything but a whole lot of crime. When we cut the police budget in Berkeley, we not only gave a lot of that money to nonprofits to help with job development, whatever, we also created our own clinic because we needed more healthcare, et cetera, whatever else. Post this pandemic moment, we're seeing now that Latinos and Blacks and whatever have less health care than any people in our societies. Let's get the analysis and make those things better for the good of a greater community.
Yeah, Gus and Jasmine, they put their finger right on the pulse. Uh, I think that you know, in order to, when you talk about government, you're talking about power. That's what, when you talk about politics, you're talking about power. To try to have a political discussion without bringing this up is 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 utopian and fantasy. You know, uh, defund the police is a good slogan. It's a good slogan. We have no problem embracing it, but we embrace it with a program. We don't leave it hanging out there as a slogan, because a slogan without a program is not going anywhere. There's got to be a program for implementation, you know. And it's a slogan that is calling up on government, because that's who that's 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 the only entity that can defund the police. It's calling upon government to defund the police. We're in support of that. But as Jazmine was pointing out, but if we're playing no role in the government, if we're playing no, if we don't have no power to make it happen, then we have to trust those people that created the problem. We have to trust those people who gave us this problem in the first damn place. We have to trust them to solve it, to resolve it. And that's bad politics. That makes no damn sense. You know, we should not trust them to solve it. You know, we should empower the people to do that. And only the people can empower the people. Because if you're expecting them politicians to wake up one morning and say, okay, we're going to empower y'all to do this. We just had a dream last night, and we're gonna give you that power. That ain't how it happens. Study the history of struggle in this country. Study how these things happen. You know, these things happen through movements, sometimes all the way up to the point of revolution. So you're not gonna have no systemic change. You're not gonna have no shift in power relationships, you know, without the people fighting for that power and winning that power. And that's what Cpac is about. It's about us fighting for that power and winning that power. Uh, if you're disunited, if you don't know what you're going to do, uh, then you're begging. You're begging the powers that be to give you something. If you're united and organized, you know, if you got the people united and organized to fight to take the power, then you're not begging. You're demanding. You're demanding for social change, and you're gonna make it happen, because you're not gonna stop fighting until it does. And that's the attitude we have to have if we want to bring about some change. We can't think that these people are going to have a moral awakening, because like Stokely Carmichael once said, I'm sorry, Kwame Ture once said that you can only make a moral appeal to somebody that's got morals. So they've proven to us that they don't have that. So this is about power. This is about power. And power is not about what you can beg and borrow. It's about what you make and what you take.
Thank you all so much. Any further comments on this? Because I'd like to follow up with your thoughts on how you feel CPAC fits in or complements those who are advocating for total reimagining of the criminal justice system, and not only policing, but how we approach punishment, incarceration.
I'll take that one, or I'll open up on it. Well, I think CPAC definitely complements it. I think CPAC is about one, giving the communities the power to determine what policing looks like, to determine funding, to have the power to immediately fire killer cops and prosecute them. So I think it's about both addressing what's happening right now, and also giving us the power, and adding weight to these like long-term solutions. And so I think it's definitely about like giving folks power. I think it's a very necessary first step.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Uh, I want to paraphrase from a book I just recently read called "The End of Policing," uh, And the author, he was saying that policing is largely a matter of war on the poor that does little to make people safer or communities stronger. And even when it does, this is accomplished through the most coercive forms of state power that destroy the lives of millions. Uh, the criminal justice system as it exists in the United States. I spent 14 years in it. I know from experience, is slavery. It's penal slavery, you know. And if you read the 13th Amendment, it says that slavery is abolished except for people who commit crimes. 13th Amendment gave the slaveholders of the South a legal means for re-enslaving our people. So I always tell people slavery in the United States was not abolished. What was abolished was the buying and selling of human beings. That's what was abolished. Slavery still exists. Slavery. So if that's what you're talking about, when you talk about the incarceral problem, I relate to it deeply, you know. And the prison system as it exists has to be abolished. It has to be abolished, and the question is, how we're going to do that? Again, again, you know, referring back to an earlier period of revolutionary movements, uh, there were utopian socialists and there were scientific socialists. Okay, utopian socialists, they had reimagined how capitalism should work for the people. They reimagined, because they could free their imaginations from the controls of realities, from the class struggle, from politics and all of that, and reimagine society as they thought it should be. They even set up these communities. They set up one right over here in Indiana, called New Harmony, Robert Owen. Uh, the problem with that type of thing is this, and we're not condemning the utopian socialists. They were social reformers, you know. Some of them were great thinkers, and they showed that progress could be made, that the system was fundamentally flawed. So they made a contribution. But in order to get from now to something different, we have to engage in the struggles that are going on. Working people right now fighting for their lives. I just got through participating in a strike, you know, during the pandemic with SEIU Local 73. These people were fighting for their life. Two people died unnecessarily, but now 200,000 people have died across the country, and a lot of them unnecessarily. So this struggle that these people were fighting at SEIU, that these workers were fighting, it was a concrete struggle to try to change this situation and better it. And that's what we have to look at. I don't have no problem with reimagining anything, but I believe we should reimagine things within the context of struggle. What fight do we have to engage in? Because if you think you're gonna reimagine your way out of oppression, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. It ain't gonna happen. you know, we have to fight our way out of this. That's the only way out. You know, we're not gonna reimagine our way out because, you know, if that was the case, artists would have set us free a long time ago. You know, we got to fight, people, and this is not to say uh, throw away your dreams. Dreams and visions are beautiful things. They're beautiful things. But we ask you, we'll unite with you with your vision because we envision a better society too. And we ask you to join us in our present fight. Join us in our present fight. The fight is now. It's about reducing harm to our people now. It's about stopping cops from killing our people now. It's about getting justice for our people now. It's about getting as many people out of jail as we can now. The movement got me out of jail. I had life for 50 years. They didn't reimagine me out. They got me out. They got me out by fighting.
Frank is so absolutely correct. I mean, if you look at the so-called founding of this country, they refer to the British who hated the monarchy coming to the United States and fighting the Revolutionary War. How are you going to find a Revolutionary War in another country? Revolution should be done in the country from which you come, against the people you're fighting for. Then they came over here, created the first apartheid system with the Native Americans all in slavery, etc., whatever else. And the history, as this country has been created step by step, has been accepted as an approach to democracy, etc., whatever else. And we don't seem to even understand it. The father of our country, George Washington, he came into office owning 68 slaves, and his wife, Martha, brought another 180. But those kinds of things we don't repeat. We don't show what kinds of people these were. Their perpetuation of capitalism, etc., white men who were landowners, etc., were the ones who created our Constitution. Women couldn't vote. We, the people of color, were 3/5 human beings. Stop and think about it. These were pure dogs and pigs that put together this country. I tell people all the time, the Constitution of the United States is not worth the paper that it's written on. And people are going to have to get involved and look at what kinds of development, training, public policy, etc., it takes for the good of humankind, for the good of people, so that we can all be successful, raise up our capacity, have great jobs, find ways to retire, have health care, all the kinds of things, breathe the air, fight climate control, etc., whatever it's out. It takes all those things. This government right now speaks out against all that stuff, starting from the top down. And if people don't get out there and get involved, I'm glad to see the numbers that y'all got going, that ain't nothing gonna change. And please, y'all, I'm 85 years old, but I want to see this stuff cleared up before I'm 100, so I can go out there and do some walking or something.
That's all good.
Yes.
I asked that question
good dream.
because of the multiple slogans and concepts floating around out there. And all three of you provided some clarity, extraordinary clarity regarding these issues. They are not all the same, such as civilian review and community control and so forth. But that's precisely why I put that out there, and I really appreciate all three of your responses. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to see questions from the wider audience, um, but I do want to acknowledge that this is going on Facebook Live. I also want to ask, especially Frank and Jazmine, if you would share with the audience um, how they can get involved, how people can donate, um, and the status of the struggle of Cpac, but also the building of the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression itself, as well as the Chicago chapter. I'd like to ask if you would share with the audience about, you know, how to get involved if you're not already on any level that they possibly can.
I just want to ask a question before we get on to that. You say that the nobody in the wider audience has
I
asked us the
can't
question.
see the questions under this format. I've tried to do that, but I'm unable to see them. I'm not sure if
Well, can the technician see them?
I
Well,
I was hoping they would be,
Can you
but
see
I
him, Jazmine?
yeah, I can see them. Nobody has asked the question. There are a
Okay.
lot of good comments, but not necessarily questions.
Okay.
okay.
Good.
Thank you
Good.
for doing
Good.
that.
But yeah, people are watching, people are following along. Thank you so much, folks who are having conversations in the comments.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank
All
you
right.
all. I
I was
really
worried there for a
appreciate
minute.
that. But as people may be developing questions, um, and I know you all are going to have closing remarks, I want to make sure that everyone within earsight and eyesight of this forum gets the information on how they can participate wherever they are, how they can donate, and how they can be a part of moving this social justice movement forward.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. If you're based here in Chicago, and you want to get involved in the movement for community control of the police, if you want to get involved for this movement for Cpac, join us. We welcome you. We welcome all folks who want to get involved in the struggle. You know, we are a Black-led organization, but we welcome everybody. So first thing, definitely check out our website, caarpr.org. You can donate, you can read the Cpac ordinance, you can see the full list of organizations who sponsor or not sponsor, I'm sorry, who endorse Cpac. You can learn more about what Cpac would do. There's a lot of information on caarpr.org. The other thing I'll say is that we do have our Monday night Stop Police Crimes meetings, and these meetings are crucial if you want to, join the struggle. In these meetings, we're organizing events, we are coordinating tabling, we're giving folks updates on our work and ways for folks to get plugged in. So those are Monday at 6. Because of the pandemic, we are meeting over Zoom. But if you're interested in attending one of our meetings and you live in Chicago, or in the surrounding communities as well, because we have some folks from Indiana who come, leave your email in the chat box and I will follow up with you, and make sure that you have that link and you get plugged in. Definitely donate. This movement, the movement for Cpac, we don't have a lot of corporate funders. We don't have, we're not a nonprofit. So we have to really rely on folks donating to us. You can donate. You can donate to us on caarpr.org. Um, and yeah, weekly we do tabling, usually on Saturdays, um, and we're always out in the community talking to folks. So yeah, if you want to join this struggle, then please join this struggle. We definitely welcome you.
Thank you, Jazmine. I'd like to, once again, express my appreciation for all of your remarks, all of the wisdom, history, and current struggle and where it stands today, um, on this call in really a short amount of time. So I would, at this time, I'd like to um, further ask Frank in particular if you would share a little bit more about the efforts to build the National Alliance across the country. I should say rebuild after the extraordinary, very successful conference that was held in November. Um, to what extent has forward motion moved, and how people participating around the country um, can connect and be a part of it.
Okay, let's deal with the connection part first. Um, we have a website, nwrpr.org, that you can go to, and you can find out at that website what what we're doing around the country, and also you can join. You can join. You can make a donation. Uh, it's a window to participation. You go to our website, it will give you a way to participate in our organized movement nationwide. And I would particularly encourage people who are outside the greater Chicago area who may be listening to this to go to the website immediately, you know, and become a part of this great movement. Uh, and I've already touched on some things that we got going on in other parts of the country in terms of the National Alliance. We're also in the process of organizing a delegated conference, which is going to take place next year. Uh, Given the pandemic, we're hesitant about setting an exact date, but we are working on it, and we're getting an enthusiastic response from people all across the country. Um, the 25 states I told you that people attended at our national conference, that has increased. Now we're hearing from people in all 50 states. There's not a state in the United States where we're not hearing from folks. Uh, within a within a within a week or so, maybe a little more than a week, maybe 2 week over a 2 week period during the rebellion. I'm talking about after May 30th, but starting on May 30th, uh, we raised over our national raised over $50,000. Uh, these were mostly working people. We didn't get no contributions from the big corporations, from Big Daddy Warbucks. You know, these were donations from mostly working people and oppressed people who don't have a lot of money but who think that we're doing great work. And here locally, it's really been amazing. Close to $200,000. You know, uh, so they say money talks and bullshit walks. So we got people here supporting us for real. So that's a great thing. Also here locally, we've opened up and nationally, both the national, both locally and nationally, we've opened up a new office that's in the heart of the Black community. It's on 6353 South Cottage Grove. It's right under the old ballroom, old Grand Ballroom, and we got a tremendous space down there that we just opened up. We have a meeting area that can hold over 100 people, and in addition to that, we also have plenty of office space and plenty of storage space. So so we're making a new day for ourselves in this struggle, and we want you to be a part of it. Um, so you can also reach us by phone at area code 312-939-2750, and so get in touch, get involved, and help us to make a great future together.
So, Mildred, we had somebody leave a question in the comments. I can read the question now.
Thank you.
Are there any, and this is from Allison Jenkins. Thanks for your question, Allison. Are there any police officers that support your mission, retired officers, officers with faith and sociology backgrounds? Is it feasible?
Well, the only police officer that I know who supports, uh, well, there was one who passed recently named Pat Hill. She was with the Black Policemen's Association here in Chicago. I think she was one time the president. Uh, she's she supported Cpac coming out the gate, and so some of the black police officers with that association at the time that it existed uh, supported us. I don't know if it still exists. No, I don't think it still does. And a former police officer by the name of Howard Morgan, who was shot 28 times by fellow police officers because he had a gun on him. You know, and at the time he was working for the railroads as a policeman. So he definitely supports us. They gave him, I think, 40 some years in jail, and we were successful in getting him freed. And the reason why we defended Howard Morgan and fought for his freedom is because he was a victim of racist police violence, and we will defend and fight for anybody who's a victim of racist police violence, including another police officer. You know, and he joined our ranks. He's presently a part of our organization, and he has taught us a lot about how the police operate. You know, he's taught us a lot from his experience about how they are in fact a paramilitary organization occupying our communities. And so, having said that, uh, we don't we don't count a whole lot of police officers uh, as supporters in our ranks. It's just not a reality, you know. But we have no problem with police supporting CPAC. We have no problem with anybody supporting CPAC. They just can't be on the Civilian Police Accountability Council. You know, we have a problem with that. You know, but yeah, I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, I think you have to look at reality, who the police are. I mean, the majority of police in this country just came out and endorsed Donald Trump. That should give us an idea, a clue of who they are.
Yep.
Um, I think though, you know, going back, we have to, and I'm so pleased that the National Alliance is doing the work it's doing. But it's apparent that we have to get some more legal minds that support some of the work we're doing too, like Leonard Hines and some of the old players, because some of the legal uh, responses that are coming out after some of these shootings and killings in other places, like Kentucky and some of those places, are just unbelievable. And so it's apparent that this movement has to be built more. And it's almost as though if the National Alliance could do it, that you all should almost put together a Zoom like this until we get past this pandemic moment, at least twice a year or so, to inform other people so that they can begin to understand. This becomes a national movement. I'm with the National Alliance, National NCOE, National Council of Elders, that was founded by Vincent Harding, Martin Luther King's speechwriter. And we're getting a lot of calls from young groups across the country who want assistance with different kinds of things, especially around police reform, because they know I have a background in it, whatever else. But it appears to me that you all have even greater depth that we need to begin exposing them to. And I'm going to start letting some of these people know about the National Alliance. So I just got to get my own self together, get my head cleared, some more knowledge. I always knew that Frank was a hell of a man, but damn, I'm going to stop cussing and calling him bad words when I see him from now on.
I just want to,
Can I add something to that question really quickly?
please do.
I actually had a conversation one time while I was tabling in Hyde Park with a black man who was a former cop. He was a member of the African American Patrolmen's League, I believe,
That's
in
it. Yeah.
Chicago. And he was actually very supportive of Cpac, but he couldn't sign a postcard because he felt as though, you know, having his name associated with this could be potentially dangerous for him. So he donated. He gave money, which I was very happy about. But I think we have to keep in mind too that like there is this blue code of silence, right? And so cops, for example, who go into the system wanting to change it, will usually get beaten, not physically, but beaten back into the blue code of silence, right? And so I think we have to keep in mind the power that that has. That, you know, even if we do have cops who do support Cpac, are they able to come forward, right, without facing any kind of like danger for doing so? Um, he's actually the only cop I've spoken to who said that they support Cpac. Um, so there's one.
So thank you for that. In our last 10 minutes of this forum, I just want to ask Jazmine, did you see any other questions before I ask each of you to give your closing remarks?
Yeah, Tracy from the Alliance. Hey, Tracy. Asked Frank to elaborate on something. So Tracy wrote, he said that CPAC would have control over the police budget, that is the power to defund the police. To me, that doesn't sound like, or to me, that sounds like an uh, exaggeration of its functions, that the city council would still appropriate the budget for the police. Is that true, Frank? I don't think that's true. I know under CPAC, the CPAC would have total control over the police budget, and the city council wouldn't allocate anything.
Well, the way that we have written it, that's the way we've written it. Um, I believe that's the way we've written it. we've written it where we would have the decisive voice in the police budget, uh, and we would also have a decisive voice in negotiating the police contract. Right now, we have no voice. You know? So I don't think I'm exaggerating it, but but even if I am exaggerating it, that's what we want to do. We want to be the decisive voice. Of course, the city council has to has to play a role in it too. But we want to have the decisive voice, which means we don't want to have a voice that can be just routinely overruled by the city council. That ain't what we want. We don't want to say, well, we think the budget should be reduced by 60% or 70% or whatever, and then the city council comes back and says, no, you can't do that. We overrule that. That's not a decisive voice.
That's not an intelligent voice either. The budget is based on what you think it needs to be used for, not just what they say.
So
we also received one more question,
okay.
A last minute question from Calvin. Speaking of the police contract, how do we address the FOP? And I would say, I guess I can answer that question through Cpac. You know, Cpac is going to be responsible for negotiating that contract. Cpac would literally be on the other side of the table across from the FOP, you know, working through that process. And so if we are in control through Cpac, then we are in control of the FOP contract.
So with that said, in these final few minutes of this forum, I'd like to ask, first of all, thank all three of you. Thank all the listeners and viewers. Um, Acknowledge that we're in the midst of a global pandemic, but as many would also acknowledge, we're in the midst of a second global pandemic, and that is of racism, which has definitely been going on much longer. So I'd like to ask at this time, each of you, if you would be willing to give a brief remarks in this last 8 minutes or so of our forum. I'd like to start with our special guest, Gus Newport, again, as we did earlier, followed by Jazmine, and then followed by Frank.
Well, thank you, Mildred. I'd like to thank Jazmine and Frank for inviting me to be a participant in this discussion. I've learned a lot myself, and certainly going back to the days and how long I've been involved in police, you, etc., whatever else, we understand that we've got a big job still standing in front of us. We've got a long way to go. We've got to get people in the streets. We got to get governments to understand it all the way to the top. We need to be have a place at the United Nations. Like I said, I was on 2 United Nations committees, the one against apartheid, the one on the question of Palestine. We have to understand the mindset of our government, the people who create these conditions, what it takes to change them, so that we, the people, can live in a much better society. Thank you all for inviting me.
Thank you.
All right, I'm next. Um, you know, the time for community control of the police is now. The time is now. We cannot wait anymore to pass community control of the police and put an end to police impunity. They are killing us. Dozens of Black people and Latinx people have been gunned down just this year. You know, dozens, you know, during this George Floyd uprising. You know, we cannot wait any longer. We need community control of the police now because police impunity is oppressing Black and Latinx communities, you know, hindering our opportunities to organize around other things, right? Making it hard for us just to live freely in our communities. We have the right to control the police. That is our democratic right, right? They are public servants. They are supposed to serve us. And we know that the way, well, in theory, right? That's what they say. but we know what the police actually do, and that's oppress us. And that's why we need community control. We need to be the ones in control of this process, having the power. And so I definitely urge you, I know this week was tough with the Breonna Taylor verdict, but I urge you, to let this moment radicalize you and bring you to an organization that's fighting for community control of the police near you. In Chicago, Carper, I said earlier, visit our website, caarpr.org. You can follow us on social media, on Twitter and Instagram. We're at CAARPR now. Stay connected with our opportunities for protest, for other live, things like this. We've done a couple of these like Facebook Live conversations. So definitely stay involved. And again, try to attend one of our Monday night meetings. We need you in this fight. Only with you can we pass community control of the police. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to express my deepest appreciation for Gus leading us off in this discussion. I think he has tremendous contributions to make to our movement still, because he speaks out of experience. And a lot of us don't have that. You can't give away what you don't have. If you don't have the experience, then you can't give it away. And what did he give us tonight? It's really important, particularly for those of you who really doubt the ability of the people to fight and win what we're fighting for. Over 40 years ago, he has said to you, that, speaking about over 40 years ago, he said to you this evening that in Berkeley, California, they made a move that actually established community control over police, and he gave you some real factual information about what happened during that period, about how crime was reduced, about how they brought, how they radicalized the police force politically, about how they were able to uh, defund the police, defund them, how they didn't just talk about this, how they actually took and transferred monies from the police. He gave you all of that information. And so what do we do with that? Uh, we're not talking about dreams here. This is not some utopian hocus pocus. We're talking about a political reality that we can make happen. All we got to do is have the will to fight for it. We got to have the will, and so many of us don't have that will, but most of us do, I believe. I think since George Eliot was murdered, that most of the people have come to that point. I'd never seen a book in my life saying ending policing. Never seen a book in my life saying that. But a book came out saying ending policing right after George Floyd was murdered. You know, there was public discussions about defunding, abolition of the police, and all of this here was ignited. Because people have now come to the conclusion that the police are not keeping us safe. And that what we're doing, we're funding an organization, a paramilitary organization, to occupy our communities. And so the Alliance is giving us a way out of that. And I'm so glad that you tuned in tonight. And I hope you will, stay with us and join us in this fight.
Thank you so much to all of our guests, Gus Newport, Frank Chapman, Jazmine Salas. It's been an honor to facilitate this evening. I want to invite all those who are listening and viewing, please make a difference, donate, as well as get involved if you're not involved already, and bring somebody with you. Don't forget to vote either. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All part of the people.
Right on. Yes, sir. Always.
Power to the people.
All power to the people.